Hey guys, Gavin, Seim here. We're going to talk about the Constitution tonight, but we're going to go a little bit beyond that because we're going to talk about what makes it law. We're going to address that a little bit as we try and always do. So I'm going to let you guys pop in here so we can get started. Break out your constitutions. Share this, like this, so people engage with it. The more you do that, the more it gets out, the more we're able to teach people about the Constitution. So the more you guys engage and share this post and get it out to your friends, we need to inform people. Hey, Mike, we need to inform people and educate people. We have so much ignorance in America about our rights, about our constitutions, about the limitations on government. And that's why we've become slaves in this nation, because we don't know anymore what it means to be free. And when you don't know what your rights are, when you don't know what the limitations of government are, when you don't understand, I see this a lot. People say, well, that's good. Government needs to do that, or government has that power, or that's the law. You'll hear this a lot. Well, it's the law. It's the law. How often have you heard especially from the professing church in America, well, we follow the laws. We follow the laws. I don't know that I've met more than countable on one hand preachers that even understand what law is. And so because we're ignorant of law in this nation, we're doomed. So share this, like this post, click angry on this post, do whatever, right? Interact with it in some way. Maybe you don't like looking at my face and I make you mad, and so you want to click the angry button. That's cool too. Just interact and engage. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about activism. Thomas, paying your $400 ticket in pennies. I could be like a loyalist and be like, what a jerk, you have no respect, right? But actually I'm going to say, bravo. We should be blocking up and disrupting the treasonous government in any principled way that we can. Okay? So let's talk about it. Today I think I want to focus a little bit on due process in particular. Now, I'm going to talk about some various sites. I'm just sitting in the studio. I have not got much work done, but here's a print from over at the printer. This is taken out down in Utah, actually, down near Zion. It's probably backwards in this. There. How's that? Poster frame, all right? But I wanted to take a few minutes tonight, and since you guys interacted with the post, I was thinking, I'm not going to do a live stream tonight. So I made the post and said, okay, if I get 100 likes, I'll do the live stream. Well, let's get at least 100 people watching this. Let's spread the word. People need to know what their due process is, what their liberties are, and why they have them. And let's start with that, okay? I want everybody to be reading their Constitution. But oftentimes the measure of our Constitution, right? The constitutionalist will often ask you well, what does the 64th Amendment say? FYI, there's no 64th Amendment. But our measure of constitutional knowledge is oftentimes, hey everybody, is oftentimes well, can you quote it? I don't care really if someone can quote the Constitution. I care that you understand the principles of the Constitution, but you know what's even more important than knowing the Constitution? And I want you to stop and listen to this. What's even more important than knowing the Constitution is knowing that you don't need it. You don't need it. You don't need the Constitution. I want to say that again. You don't need the Constitution. The Constitution affirms our rights. The Constitution affirms our natural, God-given rights, our liberties. It doesn't grant one of them. The Constitution is an organizational document for a government that's meant to be subordinate to the states and particularly to the people. That's what our federal Constitution was. The most limited, the smallest branch of government is supposed to be the federal government. Isn't that an irony? The federal government was intended to be the smallest branch of government. Hi, Mom and Dad. So if we know this going in, if we understand that the Constitution is not the grantor of rights. And people will say, oh, well, immigrants don't have constitutional rights. Only Americans have those. And I'm like, you don't even understand what your rights are. There's no such thing as constitutional rights. You have liberties. And this Constitution, I want to be very clear on this. We have no Constitution in this country. None of our politicians support the Constitution in full. Donald Trump doesn't support the Constitution in full. In fact, he defies it in a very many areas. Okay? But it's not about Donald Trump. The executive branch is supposed to be limited even more, right? We look for our president to be a leader and to defend the Constitution. And I still hope Donald Trump does that, but we need to be clear with all of our politicians, right? Whether it's state legislators or presidents or judges, or police officers, we won't make them be more lawful by shaking their hands and saying thank you for breaking the law the way you do, or thank you for breaking the law less, right? We have to call them out when they violate it. For example, Donald Trump's open support of civil asset forfeiture, which we're going to cover a little tonight because it's a complete and total violation of due process. And people say, Gavin, you're hating on Trump. I'm like, no, I'm hating on tyranny. I am so sick of us pretending we have freedom because we elect a new politician. It's time to get serious. This Constitution is universally and completely trampled. It's trampled. Let's talk a little bit about due process. A lot of good comments in here. People being harassed by their churches for exercising their rights, harassed by the government. How about this one? Did you guys see the article? If you didn't see this, I want you to go back after this live stream is done and look at the article on the page. I posted it earlier. Okay? The article about the Amish man in Kansas. He's been, I don't know if he's been in jail since like 2015. I don't think he's been in jail the whole time. He's at least been in jail for a few months, I think. This Amish man in Kansas was just convicted this week of 13 counts, including interfering with an officer. We're talking felony counts in many cases. Okay? Now get ready for this. 13 federal counts. A jury convicted him for making herbal remedies, for selling herbal salves. So here we have FDA approved stuff, and it can poison us all day long. But guess what? They're paying the federal government. Okay? And here's a good man, 12 children, like 25 grandchildren, respected in his community. Yeah, throw the names. Let's name the prisoners. Keep them on our minds, right? So this Amish man, and somebody throw up the name, because I'm not looking at the post, but I wrote the post, and I recently learned about this man. So if you know the name of the Amish man that was convicted this week, throw it in there. Let's remember his name too. Convicted. He's facing up to 68 years in prison, guys, for selling herbal salves and remedies. Now, I happen to be an herbalist, so this hits very close to home to me. I'm an amateur herbalist. I don't do it commercially. But if you make medicine, God's medicine that works, right? That's been proven for hundreds of years to have different effects. And I'm reading this article and recognizing the herbs that they're talking about in this man's medicine and saying, yep, good stuff. He's facing up to 68 years. Now, let's talk about this because we're going to go into due process with this. Okay, first of all, let's go to the Constitution on due process. You'll notice in my Constitution classes, we don't just sit here and read the Constitution over and over again. Remember, the Constitution is the alarm bell that the wall of liberty has been breached, right? It's our reminder. It's the compact, the contract, the command we gave the government, right? It doesn't give us the rights. Yes, Red Fawn, Joe Robertson, the Hammonds, the Bundys. The list goes on and on and on. And you know what? It's been going on for decades. People railroaded in court. Leonard Peltier. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. Guys, we don't have law. We don't have a constitution. Let's go to our constitutions. Page 22, if you're using this little guy that a lot of us have. Okay? Let's actually read, pretty short, good stuff. Let's read the 4th through the 8th, okay? The 4th through the 8th. Yeah, Schaefer Cox. Angela Clemens, post Schaefer Cox new YouTube channel in there. I know there's some videos getting posted up for him, and people need to follow him on YouTube. We need to get him all the support. He's locked away in an area where he can't even communicate. He gets 2 50-minute calls a week, no email. It's an isolation unit meant to cut you off. It's absolutely horrendous. Okay, Amendment 4 in tonight's Constitution class. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Okay? No warrantless searches. Or no searches without a warrant or at least immediate probable cause. Now the courts, so what do, right? What does our corrupt courts do? They pick apart probable cause and they say, well, we only actually need, like probable cause is in the Constitution, they say, right? But what do they say in Terry v. Ohio? Well, we don't actually need all the way probable cause. We need reasonable suspicion. And then they say, then they take it further, right? We need, well, just mere suspicion is all we need. So pretty soon the government is searching our cars, taking our stuff in civil asset forfeiture, and literally raping us on the side of the road as they do body cavity searches. And then they say, well, the Supreme Court allows that, okay? First violation of due process. Every court is violating due process, and every officer is violating due process. This goes back to our concepts about there are no lawful constitutional officers. And we're going to see that as we go forward. Federalist 78, Alexander Hamilton, when they were debating the Constitution is, in fact, and must be regarded by the judges as fundamental law. Fundamental law. Do you think the Supreme Court regards the Constitution as fundamental law? Let's read and find out. Amendment 5. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice be put in jeopardy of life, limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law. Nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. Now, the Fifth Amendment is violated in almost every court case, almost every arrest an officer makes, and that comes before a judge. Now, what's supposed to happen, right? The officer arrests you for a real crime under probable cause or with an issued warrant, and let's say a prosecutor or the sheriff or whatever brings these charges, and you come before a judge. Have you ever heard of if you've ever been arrested, you probably had a probable cause hearing, okay? There's supposed to be probable cause to hold you too, and this goes to habeas corpus. If there's no probable cause, you're released, the charges are dropped. If there is probable cause, you have to be given habeas corpus, which is essentially to give up the body, okay? They have to relinquish with bail or something like that. There has to be a reasonable balance of due process, not just lock you in jail indefinitely. And thus you come to the right to a speedy trial, which they keep extending and extending and extending, right? How long have our guys in Oregon and Nevada been in jail? Over a year now. See, a speedy trial would be more like 2 weeks, a month, something like that. And these issues are discussed at length at the founding. Now, this is a part that's important, that they're all violating. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb. Twice in jeopardy. There's a young man, somebody shout out his name here in Ephrata if you know. There's a young man charged with murder in Ephrata here, all right? And I know my mom's on here. I think she might know his name. There's a young man charged with a pretty horrible murder here in Ephrata. And that young man, I believe he was actually a law student, or he was going to be a law student. Chad Bennett, yes, Chad Bennett. This was like in 2014. Now, Chad Bennett, can I say this? Chad Bennett in 2014-ish, somewhere in there, sent me a message on Facebook. And he said the police in Ephrata, who we know to be completely corrupt, I've dealt with them many times. He said the police in Ephrata are harassing me. They're following me around. They're trying to get me to admit to being involved in this murder, and I had nothing to do with it. And Chad Bennett rented an apartment, I believe it was, from a woman who got murdered here in Ephrata. Okay? And so I believe I probably told him what I normally tell people, we'll film everything, you know, I mean, what can I do? There's only so much I can do because we have a lawless system. Well, Chad Bennett is arrested and charged with this woman's murder. Now, after being in jail for over a year, I believe it was, this last summer, Chad Bennett went to trial. The evidence against Chad Bennett was so weak that even in the kangaroo courts of Grant County, Washington, where they handpick the jury, not of your peers, but of who they want on your jury, even in this county, the jury was hung, meaning they could not come to an agreement on a verdict. Case closed. If you can't convict, right? Now let's go back to the Fifth Amendment here. Let's think about this. Nor shall any person be twice put in jeopardy for the same offense. Chad Bennett is still sitting in jail, even though he had a hung jury in Grant County. The sheriff is still holding him there. The prosecutor is still charging him. That's double jeopardy. Now, of course, the prosecutor would say no. I'm sure there's a Supreme Court ruling that would say no. The Supreme Court and the prosecutor don't define our laws. If you think sitting for jail for over 2 years now, they couldn't convict him at trial, so they're keeping him in jail so they can take him to trial again to try and convict him of murder. Okay? How about the Bundys? How about our patriots in Nevada? How about Joe Robertson and the Hammonds? So the Bundys go and protest at the wildlife refuge, right? How many charges were they charged with in Oregon? I think it was 21 charges. So not only were they twice put in jeopardy for the same action, they were 21 times put in jeopardy. Okay, how about, Mike Aspin's in here. He's dealt with this. I've dealt with this. When I was arrested in the courtroom, I was charged with like 4 different things. So here's what they do. The prosecutor comes. They charge you for the same action with 3 or 4 different violations so that they can either A, say, hey, we'll do you a good one, buddy. If you plead guilty to these 2, we'll drop the felony. That's one of the ways they do it. Okay? The other way they do it is they take you to trial. And this is what they expected to happen with the Bundys, but God intervened. They said, we're going to throw so many charges at them that we know we're going to get them on something. We know we're going to get them on something. And they do. The judge, Anna Brown in Oregon, and people don't understand this, the Oregon trials, the first batch of Oregon trials, and the second batch is going on right now, and quite frankly, the public defenders are doing a terrible job. It's questionable whether the defenders with the 4 that are down there now are throwing the case intentionally, because they're simply not objecting to things that are completely obvious. They're just letting everything go. They're letting the prosecution do whatever they want. There's the local boys. I'm sure they're going out to save the day somewhere. So, double jeopardy, triple jeopardy, sextuplet jeopardy. Okay, but Judge Anna Brown in Oregon, the report on her is that in her court, until the Bundy trial, only 1 case had been lost in her court by the prosecution. Ever. You don't go to federal court to be convicted. This is why they arrested Marcus Mumford and went crazy. They had no plan B for if they got acquitted, guys. They had rigged the jury. They had rigged the jury selection. They had rigged the evidence. And they had said, we're going to win this because they rigged everything. Well, guess what? God intervened. Juror number 4 spoke up. He got a conscience. And all the charges went nowhere. That's unheard of because they violated due process at every stage. Let's go on to Amendment 6. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial. Speedy is not a year, and public is not if you bring a camera into this courtroom, you will be arrested, and if you wink the wrong way, you will be removed. We have neither a speedy nor a public trial. You see why I'm saying that every judge is engaged in treason, guys? Because one, and usually many of these, is being violated in every single case. Not to mention the fact that most of the charges that they're bringing against people, the government has no authority at the state or the federal level to restrict the people within, and therefore the laws that they're being charged with and the violations of said laws are completely fabricated by an impartial jury in the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature of the cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. Wow. Let's go ahead and wrap up and then we'll talk. Well, hold on. Since we're talking about the due process, let me read something to you. And you tell me what you think. I want you guys to tell me what's coming into your mind as I read this, and then I'm going to tell you who wrote it. None shall be condemned without trial. Justice shall not be sold or deferred. No free man shall be taken or imprisoned, or disessed of his freehold or liberties or free customs, or be outlawed or exiled or any otherwise destroyed, nor will we pass upon him nor condemn him, but by lawful judgment of his peers or by the law of the land. We will sell to no man. We will not deny or defer to any man either justice or right. What are you hearing there? None shall be condemned without trial. Justice shall not be sold or deferred. Okay? You know who wrote that? That is in Care English Liberties, Volume 1, Magna Carta, Chapter 29 is the section. That was written in 1721. 1721. Guys, we didn't invent this stuff with the Constitution. That was written in 1721 to affirm the right. Now, what happens if you go to court, right? They write you a bogus traffic ticket, which is also a violation. We're going to come to that in a minute. You get a $150 traffic ticket for speeding. You're not allowed to a jury trial because it's not a criminal offense, at least not here in Washington. No jury trial, but if you don't pay, you will be stopped at the point of a gun and taken to a cage, okay? The officer says, I'm just doing my job, but you can go before the judge on this. So you go before the judge, and the judge says, basically, depending on how good the judge is at his false politeness, the judge says, well, I don't care. Sometimes, like in this county, the judges are notorious for saying, well, I find that you did commit the violation, but they'll magnanimously say, but I will cut the fine in half, right? So it's still going on your record. You still have to pay them, and they act like they're doing you a good one, you know, even though there's no evidence, there's no proof, there's no due process whatsoever. Or they say this: since you haven't had any violations, sir, we can defer this charge. You can pay $120 to the clerk, and we'll defer this charge, and as long as you don't have any violations for a year, this will not go on your record. Something like that. This is very common. This is what you'll get almost every time for small charges and infractions in the state of Washington. I'm sorry, let's go back to 1721 when they were discussing the fundamentals. None shall be condemned without trial. Justice shall not be sold or deferred. What is hard about due process to understand? Absolutely nothing. And people say, Gavin, it's the law. Gavin, this is radical. Gavin, the government's just doing their job. No! Everyone's job is to love their neighbor as themselves, and particularly so those of elected position and authority like our sheriffs and judges. Their job is to defend with their life. People say, Gavin, the police officer is in danger. You have to give them honor. The police officer is in danger mostly because they are violating their fellow man. They have placed themselves in a state of war against them, and guess what? Being a police officer is not even near the top of the most dangerous jobs. A construction worker is a more dangerous job than a police officer. Do they demand that we raise monuments to the local contractor? Oh, but the police officer is just doing his job. Sure. So was the Gestapo. Oh, but the police officer puts his life on the line. So does the burglar. All the narratives are false. Gavin, you hate police. No. I love them enough to tell them that their behavior is reprehensible. If you're not willing to walk up to a police officer on the street and call them out, or in person, or in your living room, your family members, and say you're violating the law, you're violating people, it's because you don't love them enough to speak to them the way that I do. Amendment 7. In suits at common law where the value of controversy shall exceed $20, the right of a trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall otherwise be re-examined in any court of the United States according to the rules of common law. Hold on. What about Chad Bennett here in Grant County? He was tried by a jury. The jury came up with a no verdict because they could not find agreeable evidence. What about that $200 traffic ticket, which is a suit of the law? It's a civil suit because in many states it's not a criminal infraction, they say, right? So you don't get a trial by jury, except for it also says if the value of the suit, the traffic ticket, exceeds $20, the trial by jury shall be preserved. And back to basic probable cause, no fact tried by a jury shall otherwise be re-examined in any court of the United States according to the rules of common law. No double jeopardy, guys. No twice being put in jeopardy. What did Blackstone say? It's better that 10 guilty escape than one innocent suffer. Now, under the Constitution, a higher court could, of course, review a case. You know, we set up a Supreme Court. We set up state Supreme Courts for this reason, to avoid local corruption. But they're all so completely corrupted. Guys, it's not a question of we need to find the good judges. All the judges are complicit in this system of treason. All the officers, every time they make an arrest and haul someone into this system and charge them with multiple fake charges, is complicit in this system. We don't have any constitutional sheriffs. We don't have any constitutional judges. If you think I'm wrong, don't get offended. Prove it. Prove it. Please prove it. Okay. My connection's a little weak, it says, but hopefully I'm still getting through. There we go. Okay, let's wrap up in the constitutional aspect here with Amendment 8. More due process. There's a lot of it in here. In the Bill of Rights, they were very concerned about this, and they affirmed this. Remember, the Bill of Rights was not in the original Constitution when it was first ratified, but it was insisted upon that a Bill of Rights was to be added. And there was dispute on this, of course, but the dispute was not that some people didn't want us to be acknowledging those rights. The concern of adding the Bill of Rights, guys, was that some of the people feared that by naming the rights, the government would think they had authority over them or that they were limited to those rights, which is why in the 9th and 10th Amendments, it says that this right, this enumeration, does not limit any of the people's other rights. All the rest of the rights are still reserved to the people. Excuse me, Amendment 8, excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. Now, bail is supposed to be a given in virtually every case. If you want to study this at length, it took me years to find this. This is called the Complete Bill of Rights. It is a very large volume. This is the 2nd edition. It is an expensive volume, but it has all the original source material, the debates, and it's organized by amendment. This 2nd edition has a complete section that is extremely extensive on habeas corpus, which is what I was just reading from. What's neat about this is it's doing, it's not opinion. It's citing all these different sources, original debates from the conventions, all that kind of stuff. But it's organized, instead of randomly, it's all organized by amendment, or in this case, by the habeas corpus clause, because that was so important. Even though that wasn't an amendment, it was very important, because it's also referenced back in Article, where is it here? Back in Section 9 of Article 1, the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless in cases of rebellion or invasion, where the public safety may require it, no bill of attainder or ex post facto law shall be passed. Let's stop on that for a minute as we're talking about habeas corpus, and then we're going to come back and wrap up with the 8th Amendment. No bill of attainder. Do you know what a bill of attainder is? Let's read the definition of a bill of attainder. A legislative act that singles out an individual or group for punishment without trial. Wow, that sounds a lot like a lot of groups in this country. A legislative act that singles out an individual or group for punishment without trial. I'll let you guys think on that one, because that's illegal too. And an ex post facto law is a law that's passed after the fact, and you're charged after the fact. So you did something a year ago, and now there's a law passed, and they say, oh, you can't, we're going to charge you for what you did in the past. Okay, let's go back forward to the 8th Amendment. Excessive bail shall not be required. Guys, there's a man, James Fair, up in Okanagan County. He's another man charged with murder. In his case, there's actually witnesses that saw that he was trying to leave. These people were attacking him, and one of them, I guess, we don't know. I don't personally know. I wasn't there what happened exactly, but apparently somebody jumped in front of his truck because they were coming after him with chains, and he was leaving. Even though he could have used his arms, he was trying to get out of there, and so they charged him with murder. James Fair sat in Okanagan County Jail for 8 months without even having representation from an attorney, you guys. They just locked him in there and made excuses. When he finally got an attorney, a bunch of us went up there, because you shouldn't need to hire an attorney to get due process, but the system is so corrupt, I can't walk in and help somebody, guys, if I'm not a member of the bar. Now that, of course, the bar requirement is, of course, completely illegal, but show me your liberty legislators that are doing anything about that one. Completely a violation of due process. Okay? Doesn't matter. We have a right to counsel, back to the 6th Amendment. Not a right to counsel approved by the court. And that's exactly what it is. Even some barred attorneys will not be allowed to represent you if the court doesn't like them. We've seen this in the Bundy trials. It's a sham of due process. Every judge is in on it. They're all playing the game. They're saying, I'm just upholding the law. No, law is to defend life, liberty, and property, and law outside that and outside our respective constitutions is not law. It is void. It is void. There is no law. People say there's this law or that law, or sometimes we get into conspiracy theories. Oh, you give up your rights if you say this, or if you stand in a courtroom, or if you have a birth certificate. That's all nonsense. A man cannot give up his rights. They are inherently connected to him. They are not granted by a government or by a constitution or by a paper. They are fundamental, and no government can revoke those by statute, because that will not be a law. It will be a violation of law. Everyone's rights are the same. So it doesn't matter if we use special words when the government wants you. If it's lawless like it is today, it will come and get you. It doesn't matter if you file special papers in court. All it will do is give them the narrative over you. That's why I love how Ammon, it just speaks simple words, right? Jason Patrick's doing good with this. We see a lot of these defendants, and they're just using simple words. They're not trying to play legalese games that will get them nowhere. They're just saying, you're a criminal. These are our rights. This is the truth of what we did, and you're trying to change it into a lie. They have changed the truth into a lie because they hate truth. Excessive bail shall not be required. So we went up to James Fair. There's my lady. Hi, lady. Hi, Sandra. And they were wanted $500,000, I think, to bail him out, even though there's no real evidence against him, right? $500,000 bail. Once he finally got an attorney to go in there and say, what have you guys been doing? You've had no attorney for this guy for 8 months, and the attorney took him to task a bit. They're like, well, okay, we'll lower the bail. I think they lowered it to $100,000. And so a bunch of us pitched in, and we had to come up with like $10,000 for a bail bondsman. And so we got, basically everybody got together and got enough to like make the half payment or something on that so we could get him out that day. After 8 months, you guys. There's a video. I had a video of when he got out of that jail. Can you imagine? Now let's continue. Nor excessive fines imposed. How about made up laws? $200 for a speeding ticket, $2,000 for littering, $300 for speeding, $1,000 for contempt of court. Excessive fines imposed, and no fine over $20 without a trial by jury. Do I need to like keep going on? The due process is violated in so many ways, and it's so simple because it comes down not to being granted by the Constitution, but to our life, liberty, and property. Nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. Guys, you know what's happening to these people in jail? Do you want me to tell you what's happening to these people in jail? These fathers and grandfathers and mothers, they're violating them in almost every possible way. Strip searches, sleeping on concrete benches, deprivation of food, deprivation of sensory perceptions, deprivation of warmth, blankets, sleeping naked in their cells, being violated, body cavity searches by people from the opposite sex, you guys. That's what's happening to these guys as a matter of course in jail. This isn't the exception, this is the rule. You have women, and we're hearing firsthand reports of this, you have jailers saying, I'm just doing my job. I do what the police tell me for a paycheck and a pension. You have people of the opposite sex doing strip searches and body cavity searches while making sexual remarks and laughing about it as they dehumanize the people in these jails. And you say, well, you shouldn't have broke the law. If you did the crime, do the time. Shame on you. Shame on you if you support the police and the blue line. Shame on you if you call our justice system due process. Shame on you if you celebrate any man being subjected to this cruel and unusual punishment. That's not liberty. America should be outraged. We should be outraged at our judges. We should be outraged at our sheriffs. And yes, we should be outraged at every single police officer on the street. They should be shamed for their participation in this treason, this declaration of war on our liberties, on the Constitution of these United States. If you love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude better than the animating contest of freedom, go home from us in peace. We ask not your counsels or arms. Crouch down and lick the hands that feed you. May your chains rest lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that you were our countrymen. Sam Adams. Due process guarantees to all of us, just like the Constitution affirms our life, liberty, and property, and not to be violated by it. Not to be divested of our property without a jury trial and due process of law. Do you know that 2 weeks ago, Donald Trump was in a meeting, a presidential meeting with the sheriffs and the top dogs of the country, and they were laughing and making jokes about civil asset forfeiture, from which, without trial or due process, the police officers in this country steal, that's right, steal $5 billion in assets per year so they can fund their localized war machine. And then we say, well, at least they're protecting us from the bad guys. At least they're stopping the rapists, the murderers, the robbers. Friends, the blue line are the rapists, the murderers, and the robbers. There was a case in Washington that you probably didn't hear much about, and this happens a lot. There was a state trooper, I believe it was, here in this state. He was carrying, I believe it was a victim, and he was transporting her somewhere. And on the way over the mountains somewhere here in Washington, he stopped at a remote state patrol outpost, and he molested and raped that young woman. But he'd been on the force a long time, and the state patrol did nothing about it. No charges were filed. And when one man I was talking to said he asked one of these officers he knows, and he's asked them, why don't you do anything about these things? And they said, well, a paycheck and a pension. Or they said, I'm retiring in 3 years. I don't want to get into that. If you place your paycheck, your pension, above your principle, above the liberties and rights of your fellow man, above the rule of law and due process, you're not a patriot or a protector. You're a prostitute. So we've talked a lot about due process. I hope you guys have learned something tonight. I'm going to end this because it's getting late. Most people will not watch this because it's too long. They don't want to actually learn. But you know what? We're dying of ignorance. Ignorance of God and his laws and the rights he gave to all men. Ignorance of love for our neighbor. Ignorance of some of the most simple documents. We sit and we read novels thousands of pages long to entertain us, and we read of people rebelling and rising up against corruption. And then we say, I don't want to hear about the Constitution. I don't want to hear about my rights. Oh, that's radical. That's crazy. We celebrate every year on the 4th of July men who rose up and they said, our officers are out of control. It's time to shoot back. And they did. There was no, well, we have to support the officers. And meanwhile, we have trials going on, and we have provocateurs like Doug Knowles and people in Oregon, Vegas. We have informants everywhere. We're completely infiltrated with people that we're upholding as patriots that are informants. High-profile people. Completely infiltrated with loyalists and provocateurs saying, get along, shake the hands of the government. Work with the feds. We had people down when Ammon was at the refuge in Oregon, and they were running around passing information to the feds. We're talking about militia leaders here, guys. They were shaking the hands of the feds and giving them information on what was going on. Oh, we're going to work with the federal government and try to bring peaceful resolution. The federal government and the officers across this country are the enemies of America. They are ISIS. They are the terrorists. They are the rapists. They are the robbers. And there's some that don't engage in those things. There's some officers who became officers because they genuinely wanted to do good. But for a paycheck and a pension, they refuse to stop the officers that do bad. You're not a good cop because you don't kick me in the head on the side of the road. You're a bad cop if you don't stop the ones you do. The police officer's job, the peacekeeper's job, is not to enforce the laws of the legislature. It is to defend with his life our rights, our life, our liberty, and our property. And that's not my opinion. That's not some radical idea of Gavin. That's the founding principle of the protectors. It's the God-given natural law. It's Blackstone. It's John Locke. It's our founding fathers. It's the Constitution. Men who would turn over buildings and dump tea off ships and burn ships and drag tax collectors out of their homes in the middle of the night. Men who had boldness and courage and imperfections. See, our job is to never be the lynch mob, to afford all due process, even those that have wronged us, to give them the due process that they would not give to us, because otherwise we become them. God help me to never become them. I want justice. I want their walls torn down, their mahogany thrones ripped from under them. but I want them to have the due process that we were denied. The due process that Jeff Winehouse was denied, that Joe Robertson was denied, that Leonard Peltier was denied, that the Hammonds were denied, that the Bundys are denied, that Jerry DeLoomis is denied, that Pete Santilli is denied, that Schaefer Cox was denied, that every single person, the due process that we just studied, has been violated for every single prisoner in every single jail in all of America. And when due process is denied, that means that innocence must still be assumed. So do you support due process? Or do you support a government of chaos and treason? Do you oppose and call out and try to stop the blue line? Or do you pretend it's your friend even as it murders your neighbor? Do you say you love your neighbor and then try to get them locked away in a cell? You know that Amish man that's in jail that I talked about at the beginning? Go read his article. Go watch the video and be outraged as I am. You know why they originally came after him? Because some good citizen reported that he was making false claims to the FDA. Another organization, by the way, that has no lawful authority whatsoever, that Congress, according to this Constitution right here, had no authority to create, much less to allow them to create laws. Just like the BLM, just like the Forest Service, just like virtually every alphabet agency of the entire federal government that was supposed to be limited by this simple document, and is now the greatest tyrant, controlling the actions of the states and the local governments all across America, in every courtroom, in every sheriff's office. And when not one officer, not one sheriff will stand up and say no more, you don't have law. You don't have law. The Constitution's gone, the Second Amendment's gone. It's all gone. It's all gone, you guys. If you haven't realized yet that America's gone and Trump's not fixing it, and Congress isn't fixing it, and Republicans or Democrats or Libertarians aren't fixing it, you have to resist. You have to be the forest. You have to stand up. Find a trio of people, give one of them a camera, and go out and speak out and use your voice as a sword cutting back the tyranny. Because that's what we have left. That and our appeal to heaven. And so we're going to call this good for our Constitution class tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you'll spread the message. I hope you'll do me a favor and pick up a camera and start speaking out on this manner yourself to your sphere of influence, because your voice is a sword. And I'm so proud of you guys when you pick up your cameras and when you speak out. When we find the courage to stop, to film police, to educate our neighbors, and to plant those seeds of liberty. We need a jury of our peers again. We need due process again. We need habeas corpus again. We need the prisoners set free. We need the walls of these for-profit prisons torn down. We need to stop being afraid. Let's pray. Hey God, it's us again. There's a few of us here today, not many, and there's a lot of confusion about what's right and wrong because we have so many charlatans telling us that good is evil and evil is good. We're so distracted by the fake rules and statutes of men that we get away from the basic fundamentals of loving our neighbor as ourself. So many people suffering. I just don't know what to do anymore. The violations are so horrible and so egregious. The things that our government is engaged in, from babies to children to old men and grandfathers and mothers, are just heinous. God, do not let this go. Don't let them get away with their hate of truth and justice. Tear down their walls because we're not strong enough to do it. Bring them to their knees and remove them from their seats of false authority and power, and open the eyes of the people that they can stop being divided on faction and hate for their fellow man and always pointing the finger at someone else. This is because of us. Grant us repentance and open eyes so that we can turn and hear you. And grant justice for everybody, whether they believe on you or not. Let us, through our example of loving our neighbor, show the love of Christ, rather than through the prattling of words and verses and charismatic speeches. Open the eyes of this people and give us a refuge, Father. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, guys. I'm tired. Get out there and keep up the fight. Get those live streams going. Listen. When they take me, we have to have the voices to keep it going, and we have to not be afraid. You guys have a good night.